Hi, I'm Dr. Katherine Curran, and I'm the co-founder of the Minnesota Center for Systemic Constellations, along with my husband, Dr. Mike McElwee. We started this work about 6.5 years ago, and when we incorporated the mission that we created is to nurture the development of human consciousness towards compassion and wholeness. So that's what we try to do with our work as using this fascinating modality as we're on this cusp of a big change in our civilization. So family constellation work refers to a practice of helping people resolve entanglements and patterns that seem to come to us ancestrally. And it is a way of, untangling things that might have been bothering people that no other method has been able to address. That's why people come to family constellation work. So it shows a life image of the dynamics that have created the entanglement that you may find yourself in. So that's why the word constellation is in there, because when we do constellation work, in its classic sense, there are a number of people who represent different aspects of the situation that a person is looking at. This is even true online. We use little dolls to represent people, but there's still people to represent the elements in somebody's constellation. And then there's people that also are representing as well. So you get to see a life image of whatever was unconscious, of the unconscious dynamics that fuel the entanglement or the pattern that you may find yourself stuck in. So systemic constellation work is actually the larger title for family constellation work. When this first started in Germany, as I said, it was started by a family therapist, Bert Hellinger, and so he was looking at dynamics in the family, but soon people started saying, wait, would this work in organizations? Wait, would this work on societal issues? And indeed it does. So the actual formal title is systemic constellation work, but many people know it in its first incarnation, which is really still it's kind of the basic thing to learn before you learn the other kinds, is what are the dynamics and the orders of love that have to do with constellations. So again, I'm gonna talk about, to answer that question, I'm gonna talk about it in the classic sense, because then you can see how things might come off of that. There would be a group of people in a circle, and somebody is the facilitator and there's a client, and they say to the facilitator, this is my issue, this is what I'd like to look at. The facilitator will ask them a few questions, not as many as you'd think. And then based on the biographical, it's largely biographical information that's given, the facilitator will suggest a number of representatives that might be part of the issue. So the first one that I did, I had pain in my shoulder and my leg that wouldn't heal, and I said that to the facilitator, and he suggested that we set up my mother, my father, me as a child, and the pain. So I then picked representatives from the circle to represent those people, and set them up. And then what happens is the representatives that are in the middle of this circle start to sense into the energy that they're feeling. They open up their ability to use systemic perception, and they start reporting, do I feel drawn to this other representative? Do I not? Am I dizzy in my body? Do I feel good? All of these things are information that the facilitator uses to try to understand what are the hidden dynamics. And as the facilitator works through this, eventually, usually a truth is brought to light that was covered before. In my case, as this man who was representing my father looked over at the woman representing me as a girl, and said, "I feel like I want her approval." Now, how could he have known that? So the facilitator asked me, what happened in your father's life? Usually he should mirror you, not have you mirror him. And I said, well, his mother died when he was 10, and 6 of his siblings died before they were 25. That's out of a family of 9 children, which is an astounding trauma. And so he had me put somebody on the floor to represent the dead people. And I just got in my body how that this is a terrible trauma for my father, and he never talked about it. It was so bad that he split off the way people do in trauma, and it affected his relationship with me and my relationship with men and in the world, because I felt like I had to save him all the time. So then at the end of a constellation, you try to reorder it to put him back in the right order, and me, and have him, be able to give back to him what was his, so that I can go on without having the burden unconsciously of trying to save my father. The one other thing I found out later is that this is related to the Irish famine, and that his parents were born right at the end of the Irish famine. They were in the worst part of the famine, their parents were, and so this was transgenerational trauma that had come down the line. And his siblings were perhaps trying to save their parents or their grandparents by taking on their burden and dying young. That's what we would say in constellations, is that the succeeding generations repeat the trauma of the earlier generations until it is brought to light and being able to be seen. So Bert Hellinger was a German Jesuit priest who was a prisoner of war during World War II, and then served as a missionary with the Zulu people in South Africa. And he learned from them the way that many indigenous people are able to sense these other energies. He learned how to do that from being with them for 16 years, and how to sense the subtle energies that actually became the basis for family constellations later on. So they would set a place for an ancestor at the table, and it wasn't superstition. People could feel the energy of the ancestor there, and he learned how to do that. So there's part of constellations that has an indigenous root. And he went back to Germany, left the priesthood, became a family therapist, started setting up families and to help people resolve things, and started noticing that the representatives for people's ancestors would say something like somebody's grandfather would say, "Oh, my leg is numb," and then the client would say, "Well, my father lost his leg in the war." And they started noticing that this energy would come into people. And so that, that was the genesis of family constellations. The reason I talk about this indigenous experience of energy is that everybody has this ability to sense energy like that. It's just in the Western world, we turn that down. So in constellations, we turn that back up, so that almost everybody I've ever worked with can sense energy like that. And it's an easy doorway into this whole other set of abilities that humans have that we don't know about. So the knowing field. So I've already mentioned that people can sense energy, and which was this big mystery. Where is this energy? What are we sensing into? And in 1995, Albrecht Marr, who was a German psychiatrist who was involved in this work, coined the term the knowing field. It's like if we open up our ability to sense the way I've talked about, and receive this information into our bodies, it's like the information is there. It's waiting for us, and it wants to be helpful to us to work through issues. It's similar. It's a friend of mine says it's like there's like all these energy neighborhoods. So it's not the same as non-ordinary reality that shamanic practitioners use, but it's like related. And it's also related to the imaginal realm. But the big discovery was that this energy is there and wants to help us. And when we set the intention to discover or uncover something, the energy lines up. And I've experienced it happening. I think there's three parts to it. The first part is to really do your own work, because, you know, as Thomas Hubel and others say, like, we're born into a trauma field. We all have trauma, some closer to us, some farther away. And until you open up these deeper realms, you don't even know what it is. Usually, I've been amazed at the things I've discovered, and amazed at the things my clients discovered. So the first thing is to do your own work. The second thing is to join a training. We offer trainings here. We have them right now in 3 tiers. The first is a growth group. That's the first number of months. Then the second is learning the skills to be a facilitator. And then the third is, I think, what we're going to be calling, well, some of it is practice development. Now that you know how do you develop your practice? How do you practice more? But also, how do you go deeper into it? Like, there's a really spiritual dimension of constellations that is called facilitating from the empty middle, which really means how do you get your ego out so that you can really let this information emerge from the knowing field. And that's a discipline, I think, that it's not just about learning the skills, but it's a contemplative discipline, at least for me. And the other thing is reading a lot, reading Hellinger, reading other people. This is a practice that no one person owns. There's not one academy of constellations. It's growing up all over the world. It's very organic. It's coming latest almost to the United States compared to everywhere else, and latest to the Midwest in the United States and the South. And so there's active online groups that discuss new developments, try new things. It's very exciting. And it's a kind of a lifelong endeavor, if that's what you want it to be, because there's so many places to grow and so much to do.